Shich Kulawat, Wanikshas, Atwice, Kamiakun, Lutsan, Nawinithla, Ichiiwa, in me homeland. My name is Atwice Kamiakun Red Thunder. I'm a member of the Wenatchipum Band, one of the bands of the 14 tribes of the Yakima Nation. My heritage also is of Nez Perce and Cayuspum. I'm here today to share with you some stories, legend, and encounters that I've had with Sasquatch, which is, in our language, we called him Tatasia. When I was born, my family lived in Celilo Falls, which is on the Columbia River. My father was a fisherman, and we were raised learning the legends and the do's and the don'ts of children for fear that we might fall into the river or get packed off by wild coyotes or wolves or the Tatasia. And that was a scary thought for us. I don't remember if it was weekly, but we would go to the smokehouse and we would be told these stories by our elders. And the children had to sit in the front row. We couldn't so much as twitch, or we would get a switch from the willow stick that they held as the elders sat behind us. But one of the stories that they told us when we were very young was that, and it was a teaching that we had to remember because they didn't repeat. They told us that we were getting ready to go pick our berries in the mountains, and this was what we had to be aware of. And that was the Tatasia, and that was our first teaching. They said that we had to stay together, that we had to stay with an adult or another child if we were going by ourselves to the bathroom. They told us we couldn't eat at night because if we took food out there, it could smell and make them hungry and come after it. They told us that there were already stories that they knew of our people getting stolen, our women. And so that was the first teaching that I had regarding the Tatasia. And then as I grew older, I heard others that I'm not going to be able to share at this time.
In North America, the subject of Sasquatch is of great interest to many, as evidenced by the popular success of several television series featuring the search for Bigfoot. Academic researchers, experienced outdoorsmen, and paranormal enthusiasts have spent countless hours examining every angle of the subject. If physical evidence of the creature is not yet obtainable, perhaps approaching the subject by an examination of social anthropology and mythologies will yield better results.
I'm a full-blood Couchiching Cherokee, reside here in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, well, small community right outside called Moody's, Oklahoma. And I am a storyteller, have been for roughly about 35 years, traveled all over the United States, border to border, even been blessed enough to go across the waters and share who we are as a Cherokee people to others. And so it's been a wonderful time. I was raised in as traditional a home as you can consider back in the 1970s. And so the topic that we're speaking about today is of everyday life for me and my family growing up, talking about this creature that many refer to as Bigfoot. We grew up around it, you know, stories and things of that nature. You know, when a lot of people, when I watch them on TV and watch them on video, it's always an ooh and an all kind of thing. For us, it's just a ho-hum kind of thing because it was everyday life.
Shaitaka, or Big Man, is a kind of husband of Unkska, the earth, who is wise in the way of its own natural wisdom. Sometimes we say that this one is a kind of animal from the ancient times who can take a big, hairy form. I also think he can change into a coyote. Some of the people who saw him did not respect what they were seeing, and they are already gone. They exist in another dimension from us, but can appear in this dimension whenever they have reason to. See, it's like there are many levels, many dimensions. When our time in this one is finished, we move on to the next. But the Big Man can go in between. The Big Man comes from God. He's our big brother, kind of looks out for us.
In our world, there is no separation. You know, it's been today's society that's created that wall between paranormal and everyday life. In our world as Cherokee people, there is no wall. We walk in their world, they walk in ours. Now there is life above, there is life below. But in this world right here, if there are those spirits that are stuck, they walk with us, we walk with them. Same thing with the Bigfoot and those creatures that today we don't understand. They're a part of us and we're a part of them. There's no separation. There's no separation.
Paul Buckner is an author who chooses to carry on the tradition of Bigfoot folklore in the form of fictional novels. He is inspired by his Cherokee heritage, but acknowledges his stories are for entertainment purposes only.
I don't consider myself a traditional storyteller in the Cherokee Nation, the cultural sense. I look at myself as a modern storyteller, and I'm Cherokee. So a lot of those Cherokee stories that I grew up here, and a lot of the folklore, the mythology that you do here in Native American culture is just fascinating to me. I think one of my favorite stories growing up as a kid was how the possum lost his tail. You know, and that's one of those stories that is designed to teach kids as they're growing up. There's a lot of those stories like that. It's almost like a parable in the Bible. It's just a story to teach you, you know, intrinsic values. My take is, as a modern Cherokee storyteller, is you know, I like to be a little bit more creative, because I'm not living in 1780, I'm not in 1880, and you know, and it's a modern era, so I love just creating new stories, and you know, if I can pull from some of that culture, great, but if not, you know, I'm not really concerned with that.
A long time ago, there were Anishinaabe living in the wilderness somewhere. They lived near a lake. Things were very different back then than they are now. There was much to be feared all the time. People never knew what was going to come to their little village. At one time, some people arrived in their vicinity. These were not like people as we know them. These were beings that were very large and were covered in hair. They called them hairy hearts. They arrived yelling. That's how they announced their frightening arrival. If someone rushed outside to see what the yelling was about and saw them, that person fainted and was killed. Almost all of the Anishinaabe people were killed in this way. Only one boy survived out of that group of people living in the village. He was orphaned when his parents were killed by the creatures. He must have had some supernatural power, too, to have survived. For one thing, he did not run outside when he heard the yelling. He hid, and then at night he ran into the bush to hide. He made one attack at the hairy hearts. He killed one by the ice hole. He pushed him under the ice. Then he killed another. He used an awl to kill it. He didn't have a knife, nor an axe, nor a club. He just had an awl, and those hairy hearts that he had killed came back to life again. His effort was in vain, so that orphan had to hide from them. He hid in the bush. He would spy on them. They couldn't see him because he was well hidden all the time, and he didn't faint when he looked at them. Every day he studied them. He would watch them when they were fighting in the daytime. He saw that when those creatures were stabbed while they were in battle, the wounds did not hurt them at all. They could not be killed. They would heal their wounds very quickly. The boy wondered why the creatures were so resilient. One night he approached them in their dwelling. That boy had been gifted with some supernatural power. He thought to himself, "When I was small I had dreamed of a feather. A feather had given me love." Sure enough, he became a small, light, downy feather. He floated up to the top of the dwelling because he was as light as a downy feather. He could see the hairy hearts sleeping. He could see everything from the top of the dwelling. There was a shelving made up above near where the smoke hole was. There was a row of hairy hearts laying there. At night they would remove their hearts and place them on that shelf. That was one reason he couldn't kill them, because they were able to do that. There were 10 hearts laying there. They were beating because they were alive. He pinched one of them slightly. Immediately he heard one of the creatures make a faint moaning sound in his sleep. He pinched another one a bit. Same thing. Then he came flying down again and went to hide. The next morning he knew that the creatures were going to fight somewhere. He could see them removing their hearts and leaving them on that shelf. And then they went running off to where they were going to fight. He went over to that wigwam and went inside. He had found a knife. He went to the shelf and stabbed all the hearts until they were not beating anymore. And over at the battlefield, suddenly all the hairy hearts dropped one by one while they were fighting. And it was that boy who had killed them. After that, there were no more of those creatures that were heard of again. It was that boy with the special powers that had killed them all.
We just call them Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Sabe. I always go back to my cultural traditions, and I look at the 7 grandfather teachings. There's 7 animals that are represented on there. There's bears, loons, fish, and like I said, surprisingly, the Sasquatch is part of that whole teaching. And when I look at the teachings, I think the Sasquatch is just part of the whole thing and not really set aside. A lot of people won't embrace that just because of the believability or non-believability of it. Like the spirit, I think the representation of honesty with relation to the Sasquatch within the grandfather teachings is that it's almost a test of your belief system, your personal belief system. On the other hand, there are teachings associated with the being in general. What can you learn from him? What can you learn from honesty? You know, those kinds of things. When I look at the grandfather teachings, I don't treat the Sasquatch any other different than I do with the other animals represented on the I guess the teachings and stuff. So.
Native Americans and First Nations include descriptions of many fascinating creatures as part of their mythology and folklore. Descriptions of these creatures may vary across the different tribal bands, but can still be recognized as being of a similar type.
Because he's not a prominent character in a lot of our stuff, it's almost like we have several different categories of storytelling. And he's kind of off in his own. Again, a lot of them are accounts, not necessarily, just like we say, we have a character called Jigskin. And Jigskin is one of those kinds of characters that when you do something stupid and you want to tell the story, but you don't want everybody to know it was you blame it on Jigskin. Jigskin did this. That's kind of how we do our Bigfoot stories, is by account and not necessarily in myths and legends, you know, because again, we talk about the skeletal remains of those giants. We talk about giants in many of our stories, giants coming from the west. We talk about those slant-eyed giants. We talk about Stonecoat. We talk about Spearfinger. We talk about many of these other mythical creatures, but we really don't know if they were actually Bigfoot or not, because Stonecoat could have been Bigfoot. Spearfinger could have been Bigfoot. Many of these mythical characters that we have could have been Bigfoot, but we don't know.
I've talked to a lot of folks in the Cherokee tribe, and I got a friend back with the Eastern Band too that I've spoken with on several occasions. You know, the Cherokees don't have a whole lot of stories regarding Bigfoot. There is one particular story about Jukalu, and it's roughly translate to slanted eye or sloped. And that story I know has been around since at least 1823, when the Europeans first actually wrote that down. But there's very little other than that exists as far as Bigfoot stories. But you know what I find really interesting about any culture is stories sometimes are just purely for entertainment too. You know, even in the Cherokee tribe, we've got stories that have been passed down from generation to generation that are just that. They're just stories. They're just entertainment to keep kids, you know, behaving. As far as the Cherokee and a lot of stories there's not a whole lot that I've ever really been able to find, and a lot of elders that I've talked to that just don't have any really Bigfoot stories. And that may be simply because of after the removal and we came to Oklahoma, that maybe Bigfoot wasn't here in Oklahoma as much. Maybe that just shifted away from our culture here.
There are some important points to consider while searching the North American folklore for Bigfoot. The main trouble with oral traditions is that they change over time. A wealth of information has already been lost or even falsified primarily by outsiders who misrepresent information in order to lend credibility to what they want to be true.
Like totem poles, for instance. People talk about that. Well, you know, they've got Bigfoots on totem poles. A lot of times they're misidentifying that with bears, because bears, no matter what Native American tribe there is speaking to you at the time, bears are very much a part of just about any tribe. And I think sometimes there's a lot of misidentification with that, and they compare or put the two together, and you know, I think that kind of hurts credibility somewhat too. So I would say it's a cautionary tale, really, when you start trying to invoke Native American anything on something, unless you're just truly a real part of it. I like to stay away from that. You know, I don't want to say, well, my tribe believes this, so this is what we do, and this is what my belief is. You know, there's just not enough information out there for me to do that. I really believe that they think that, you know, if I use the word Native American behind this, that's automatically a minority point. So that gives some credibility to my story now. That's not necessarily the case, because for me, for instance, I'm not a traditional storyteller of the Cherokee tales and stuff, and I would never consider myself that. I wasn't raised traditionally. Yes, I am a Cherokee Nation citizen. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean that just because I'm Cherokee that anything that I say as regarding any of our stories or anything like that is the gospel. You know, so there's an element of value, I think, in the just how immersed are you in the traditional culture, you know, and there's a big difference, I think, in that, because there's very few people that I know, Cherokee, Navajo, I've got, you know, friends in several different tribes and stuff, and there is a degree of just how immersed they are in traditional cultures. So, you know, you have to take that kind of with a grain of salt too, and to verify, you know, what that story is. So, I mean, where do you call up a tribe and verify a story about, you know, folklore and tales and stuff like that? I mean, you call the chief's office and say, hey, I heard this story. Is this really true? Is this what you guys believe? You know, who does that?
Among those laboring to preserve the oral traditions of his heritage is Dr. Charles Gourd, Executive Director of the Cherokee Heritage Center and Museum in Delacroix, Oklahoma.
My main interest area, though, is our Cherokee heritage, our history, our stories, to make sure that those are continued into the future. Unfortunately, most people perceive, and it is a fact, that most of American Indian and indigenous populations tell oral traditions and oral histories, and they're not recorded. So if someone gets hit by a bus or passes, those stories go with them. And someone else may have heard them, but they always put a slightly different twist or a different version to it. Then they'll get into arguments over, well, they really said this, but they meant that. So I think it's important now that we have oral history projects. And we're working with Oklahoma State University Library Association, has a lady that specifically goes out and works with individuals to collect their family stories, their Cherokee stories and stuff like that. So we have that in the form of what's being recorded electronically and stuff. We also have a project going where we're sending our archivist with the Adult Immersion Language Program to all of the major places where there are collections of Cherokee stories that are written in the syllabary. And we have digitized all those, and then the language department is going to translate all of those. We are putting a lock and a restriction on those things that are ceremonial, you know, medicine ways or this, that, and the other, because those are not for public consumption.
When you start losing your language, you start losing your identity as a people, and you lose that culture, and that's That's who we are. And it's so important to us that, you know, what's funny is like you can hear the same story from two different speakers. And then you can talk to other people. Okay, you just heard that story. What did you get out of it? Everybody interprets that differently. Everybody has a different takeaway, you know. So when you think about it like that, and then you start thinking about, okay, well, these are Cherokee stories. This is folk tales, you know, and myths and things like that. So how much is reality, and what was that reality then when that story was first told?
The subject of Bigfoot can be taboo even among those who are cultural insiders. While the reasons vary, this guarded behavior can make the gathering of information even more difficult.
Bigfoot, we never talked about it. It was a big taboo. It was because, we never did talk about it. And we always taught for us to respect the forest, respect the woods, and we always killed what we ate. We never threw nothing away. We didn't hunt for sport, but Bigfoot is one thing that nobody talked about. But we knew that there was something out there in the woods, and they also told us, you know, not to be out there past dark, you know, because it was basically that's when the spirits came out, and I never knew it until I got older and actually had an experience with a Bigfoot out there. As I got older, I started to watching things a little bit more closely, and asking a lot of the elders and a lot of the old timers that actually lived around the area if they had anything strange going on there. And then sure enough, they started opening up and started talking about it. And people have actually seen Bigfoot out here. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's dealing with, they don't want to get ridiculed. They don't want to be classified as a drunk alcoholic or a drug addict.
I've had talks with some people that back in the day, like we're talking maybe late or early 1900s, late 1800s, the involvement of Sasquatch in the culture was one of almost secrecy, because nobody wanted to talk about it, because just talking about it would sort of somehow diminish the power or the effectiveness of the teachings that Sasquatch would provide to our people. Now, they just wouldn't come out and tell anybody. There are certain people that are picked out for to be medicine men, to be shamans, if that's what you want to call them. Some people just prefer healers, and apparently the Sasquatch would come into their rooms at night. Now we're going into like physics and that kind of, how can you physically do that? And you know, that's the kind of stuff that I look at when I think of legends and stories and that kind of stuff. So apparently, I'm going to just say the spirit of the Squatch would come in, and it would sort of take your essence or your being or your soul or whatever it is about you, and then take you out, and then within that realm start teaching you about healing, medicines, how to use this, how to use that, those kinds of things. And that was the role of the Sasquatch back in the day.
I must tell you that I have asked permission at one time to talk about them. It's one of those things in our tribe, they are taboo to talk about. But my purpose, my sole purpose in talking about them is so that they will continue to live. Because if we don't tell the stories, then they will cease to exist. And so today I share that. Our little ones, they are known by a Cherokee name. We don't say it, because if we say it, we challenge them. They are very knowledgeable. They are what we might consider in other countries like brownies and sprites and fairies and trolls and things of that nature, because if you go to those countries, they're just as real as what I'm talking about today. The giants, we don't know where they came from. We see reminiscent of it now more than ever.
I've been to several conferences talking about it. I speak publicly. It's okay for, I guess maybe there's a lot of other First Nations people that say, hey, way to go, you're doing good. And then at the same time, there are other First Nations people that say, oh, wait a minute, you're sort of giving up our secrets, or you shouldn't be, doing this kind of thing. But my own, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not doing anything that's wrong. What I'm doing is I'm sharing stories. I'm trying to educate people on the Sasquatch.
I'm what you call a renegade. I was the first Native American selected to go to Europe as a high school student ambassador when I graduated from high school. And I got what you call a prep school education, weekly, learning how to walk, talk, eat, sleep, and be with Europeans in every different country that we were going to be in 13. And I got to meet people, not only in Washington, D.C. before we went. We were there for briefings, but when we came back, we spent 5 days in New York City, so I saw the other side of our world. But because I believe my eyes were open, and I have huge interest in learning and reading, I'm a voracious reader, and I know that I'm a different type of renegade. I want the truth. I want people to live the truth. And because I'm a speaker, and because I write legends and I write our curriculum and I share it with whoever wants to learn it, I know that I'm criticized. But I'm 70 years old and I could care less.
Understanding the purpose of a particular story is critical to those wishing to use folklore as a means to understand truth. An understanding of the Native American worldview and how this worldview is applied today is necessary to understanding what kind of creature the Sasquatch might be.
As kids, we're told stories, and the stories I've passed on to my kids as well. A lot of them have been not necessarily to scare the children, but to let them know that there is something out there, and that being or beings can, if it has the opportunity to grab you and take you away or lure you away. And it was stories like that as a kid growing up, you kind of understood it, but it was just, as a kid you figure it was stories to keep you nearby, not to wander off. Out in the woods, it was explained earlier that you don't cry in the woods because sorrow also attracts them, and you don't whistle because that's some of the communication that they have as well. And a food offering is sometimes left for them. A tobacco offering is sometimes left for them for visiting them in their home while you're there. Because once you leave your place and head up, you're basically in their home. You're raiding their ice box, as I like to say, because you're out there collecting the berries, you're out there hunting, you're out there and doing all this stuff out there that they live off and thrive off. And as a person of Native, we lived with them. And we moved with them from the lower elevation down to the waterways and to the higher elevations as the seasons went along, and then circled back to our home, and then putting our foods away for the winter, and then surviving off of that, and then doing that cycle all over again. And then that's when we would run into them on our travels there and home.
The wild stick shower lives in the mountain in lodges underground. Doors to these lodges are heavy with snow and earth. You cannot find them. They have no fire in these lodges, but dry their meat and salmon by fire somewhere in the woods where they hide. They dress in bearskins tied up the front with strings. The head of the bearskin covers the head of the stick shower and keeps off rain and snow. That bearskin dress is warm and dry and warm for the coldest winter. The stick shower is tall and slender. He is a good runner. He has medicine that renders him invisible. They go long distances in one night. Maybe they hunt over on the Columbia River near Dales early in the night. The next morning they are over here in Yakima County, all up Yakima River. The stick showers are good hunters. Nothing can get away from them, nothing can escape them. When you hunt on Goat Rock, you have to watch. You have to watch close all the time. You are on a rock, maybe you cannot see around that rock and cannot see on either side. The stick shower pushes you off that rock. You fall far down to death. Some Indians get killed this way. To hunt where the stick shower is, 4 or 5 of us go together. 3 hunt walking not far apart. One is here, one down below, one is higher up the mountain. We watch ahead, watch on each side. The 4th is behind. He watches back over the trail. The stick shower might be following us. Must always watch for the bad stick shower.
These traditional laws are also called unwritten laws. And our Washiani way of life, which is thousands of years old, comes with these laws. And we're taught in our longhouses by our elders what to do and what not to do. And I don't believe that our elders would give us scare tactics. I believe that those stories are true, that we have had not only women but men stolen, taken away. And I believe that's where they're at with those Bigfoot.
Well, it's like basically most of the time I take it from the point of view of who's telling the story and what's their purpose. Oftentimes, if it's just entertainment, you take it for what it's worth. Other times, and it depends on, again, who's telling the story, a lot of these are personal experiences that they've had. They'll be very hesitant to talk about it to other people unless it's someone else who's had a similar experience. And then they will compare notes, so to speak, on what happened with their experience with the Bigfoot or the other creature, whatever you want to call it, so that there's some commonality into what the story represents or why the presence was even there.
Also too at night, when we do that here a lot here in Texas, you know, we come around a campfire and we go down over there and start telling stories. You know, that's how our folklore started. Texas has the best stories out here. I mean, our tales are tall. And then that's how a lot of these stories came about, because they couldn't tell it to the other people. They went up there and they only told their stories just to certain individuals that were there that they could trusted, and make sure that they wouldn't make made fun of. You know, and that's the way a lot of our stories and traditions has came down. A lot of stuff, you know, a lot of the traditionals too. You know, some people actually drew them on the ground and actually said this is what we actually saw. But a lot of the stuff have actually been told at night around campfires, and that's the best way. And that's a lot of history has been told that way.
Though thoroughly modern, many of the Native Americans still practice the traditional ways of their ancestors. It has proven to be a unique balancing act for those wishing to keep the old beliefs alive, while so many of the younger generation are rapidly moving off the reservations and being absorbed into a culture of the New World. Many are choosing to become Bigfoot researchers and have encounters of their own, in effect becoming and creating a form of modern mythology.
Now as we approach a more modern time, we were okay with the belief in Sasquatch. It was commonplace, so as a people, it was just part of it. Now, modern technology, cell phones, TVs, I was going to say VCRs, if you remember what those are, those kinds of things. Because they influenced the development of a culture, of a society, you sort of lose touch with the spirit of the land. You lose spirit, or you lose a connection, because you're You don't go out anymore. You're not on the lake. You're not out running around in the bush. You're not out making forts. You're not trapping. You're not doing those sorts of land-based activities. So you lose that connection. And when you start losing that connection, then you're losing that connection with the, I'm going to call them spirit beings in the forest. Sasquatch being one of them.
I was raised more with the traditional ways in our ceremonial grounds, and so I learned a lot of those stories, a lot of those medicine ways. When you all contacted me about this, I hadn't thought about it for years. And you know, it's not, to me, it's not something, either you believe in it and it's true, or you don't believe in it and it's not. You either experience it or you don't. And it's like being a veteran, you know, once you've been there, other people understand your story better than those who haven't been out there, although they may have empathy for it or say, yeah, you're right, and pat you on the head and dismiss you. So count me among the believers.
We enjoy these stories with each other because these are our teachings. This is what ties us. We didn't have science to tell us that Bigfoot was a different kind of being. We don't know that. We don't know if he's a missing link. We don't know if he's a creature all by himself. Again, we take him as one of our own. My granny talked about 12, 15 foot long rattlesnakes. Big, not just little bitty. I say little bitty, you know, not just 6 inches around, but huge. We used to hear about the little deer running around here. We used to hear about more white creatures running around. Those all belong to the mythical side, what they call the mythical side of our culture. And so once we begin to understand and accept, maybe Bigfoot will begin to trust us a little more. Because right now, all they want to do is catch him and butcher him and put him on show. You know, I'd run too. I'd hide too. I think when you get to your native communities, because there's a little bit better understanding, he comes around more often.
I was told at one point in time that science is the search for the truth. And my immediate response was, is that truth with a capital T or not? Because that makes a difference. Who wants to know and why? I think with the scientific approach is useful and valid in its own setting and environment. There are scientific things we need to know about climate change. There are scientific things we need to know about communicable diseases. There's an appropriate role for scientific research and the scientific method and replication. You know, I'm a social scientist, and so we kind of have a different twist on some of that. But then dealing with cultures from around the world and people's spiritual beliefs and the environments in which they live and they come from, there's no way that this is not true given all of the different places around the world. Now, if you wanted me to scientifically prove that, I can't. But as a social scientist, I can, because we have the stories, we have the people, and we have evidence. There was a story that on the Bigfoot and story along that line, and this white guy saw one, and that made it real. Before him, it wasn't real. It was something that, and is just told to put the kids to sleep or whatever. But now that this white guy saw it, that validated it. And everybody from then on accepted the fact that Bigfoot existed somewhere there in the Montana area.
Though the relationship with this creature is difficult to define, the significance of the Sasquatch in the lives and minds of these ancient people is undeniable.
When I look at the Sasquatch, I also look at other different animals that are around here. If for instance, you're driving down a road, you see a wolf off to the side. Now, a wolf being a messenger type animal, then you sort of you sit there and go, well, why did I see that? Is there, you know, you look at what is transpiring. You know, I mean, a lot of people will just sort of look up and go, oh, geez, look at that, there's an eagle flying up ahead. But the eagle is making himself known to you. When you have sightings of animals, those kinds of things, it's sending a personal message from the Creator to that individual for them to have a look at, sort of reevaluate where they are, what's going on in their lives, and for them to take a good look at themselves at that point. And it would be the same thing with the Sasquatch. Like even if you were driving down the road and you see a bear cross or whatever, then, you know, bear being a powerful spiritual being, you know, like the representation being the bear spirit, healer, dealing with medicines, power, just your whole inner being strong, forceful, you know. Then you sort of look back, am I lacking in that area in my life, or am I not? You know, because when you sighted that bear, you're going, wow, is that ever cool? But on the other side, there's also a spiritual connection that you have to sort of kind of figure out. And it's the same thing with the Sasquatch.
I would say that a lot of times, if you are afraid of another presence or something else, you will personally do things which could cause them to be also afraid. And, you know, when two creatures are afraid of each other, misunderstanding and that will happen. But in all of the experiences that I've had and people I've talked to, there's been no violence, intimidation, or threat or anything like that. It's like they're just as curious as we are. So, you know, the ones that, you know, when I know their presence, I know they're just watching around and they've never done anything, but I know they're there. I know it's not, you know, I've been experienced in areas where there used to be, you know, like coyotes or wolves and that kind of stuff. That's a whole different, you know what that presence is. And it's very similar sometimes when I think about knowing that presence. It's the same thing as the presence of an owl. An owl can be a skili or a shape changer. It can be someone who's there as a conjuring thing. Cherokee medicine is also divided, I guess you could say, like black and white. There's good medicine and there's bad. And there are people who learn, oftentimes take good medicine, they call them conjurers, and they'll do things like that. And some of these can actually change their shape. They become another creature. And most of the time, that's in the form of an owl. So there's a phrase we can use when an owl appears. There's a phrase we can use to find out if in fact it's a shape changer or if it's an owl that's presenting itself.
We have this thing here called a lechuza. And we always talked about the lechuza. If you go outside at night, the lechuza is going to get you. It's an owl. And they say it's half owl and half woman. And it's going to get you. And once you come out in the woods, and if you know that there's one there, you whistle, and it whistles back, that means there's one there. But Lord and behold, Bigfoot also whistles. But the thing is, again, me personally, I wouldn't go out there at night. There's something about the night, you know, the night has to be respected. The night is basically, our time is the daytime. And, you know, other animals and everything like that, their time is the night.
Is he friend or foe, abductor or protector? Perhaps he is a different thing to different people. Perhaps the relationship has changed over time.
In our world as Cherokee people, he's exactly that. He's just another brother. You know, many of the accounts that we discussed before we started interviewing were our stories. And our Cherokee stories talk about at one point in time in this world that we lived with giants and little people. I'm sure the audience will understand when I talk about giants and little people, but there are those that may not.
Traditionally, the role of Bigfoot Sasquatch and the culture, local culture. I say local culture and local tradition because this is the Treaty 3 area, and they have their different beliefs and other native cultures. So within this area, he's been seen as a helper, teacher, environmentalist, traditionally mostly a healer.
A lot of people have come to me with these stories of the children that have gotten lost out in the woods and no harm has come to them, but you hear the story, it was a bear that was taking care of me. So they're more of a protector than they are a taker of children or people. But there is a site here on the Yakima of Tatathea, of a fallen Tatathea that we have supposedly fallen and buried on site. And this one here used to roam all over the place. And she had a basket, and anybody that was wandering around by themselves, traveling themselves, then she would take them and put them in the basket and then go home, or go back up into the hills with them. So I know the stories. I've heard the stories, and they're all similar wherever you go. And so nowadays I don't see it as that way anymore, as them taking anybody.
If there was anything like that, it would be attributed to the Wendigo, not specifically geared towards Sasquatch or even little people. The little people, the stories that I've heard is that they're just they're just into mischief.
I believe is a prehistoric that he is put on this earth by our Creator, our Tamanwithla, and that he's locked here, and he doesn't want anybody to see him. And when I see those footprints that are cast in stone, I believe it.
Chwaniti is tall, hairy, and smells like burnt hair. He's about 9 feet tall and possesses a very strong stench. He never hurts humans, but does like to play tricks on people, like throwing rocks at them. He loves to tease horses and dogs. One day, a family heard strange, indistinguishable sounds coming from a draw far up the mountains. The sounds, as of a man crying, drew nearer and echoed and resounded through the mountains until they were very close. The dogs were barking hard, and suddenly were thrown against the flap of the teepee. The daughter, the bravest and smartest, went outside and said, "Why are you terrifying us in this way? We are already afraid. We know who you are. We know you are sin. That is your punishment for the sin you committed, and here on this earth there will be no end to your wanderings and roaming about. Then here you are terrifying us, scaring us. It is God's will that you be this way. Go, turn yourself around and walk away. Get away, back away from us." Suddenly all was quiet. After a little while they heard Chwaniti's voice again, but further away. He had left them, no longer bothering them and terrifying them.
My one thing is that somebody else will be interested in it, and maybe somewhere down the line my great-grandchildren will be told the stories that I'm telling today from those new storytellers. So I'm looking for a future in the things that I do, not necessarily for me, but for my grandchildren and so on and so forth. So I'm glad to be here, glad for this opportunity that I can come and I can share my stories. And on this topic, it's not very often that we have an avenue to share these types of stories other than at home when something is out of place or we hear something that is unexplainable. Must be Bigfoot again, one of those kinds of things.
A few years ago, there was this home that I was in, and in this home, a family was being bothered by a spirit. And this spirit was attracted to the negative or causing negative energy towards the people inside. And they tried the local clergy on the reservation to try to remove the spirit, and it wouldn't go. So they called in somebody more powerful from central United States. So he came in from the Oklahoma area. The part of the ceremony was that they were going to drive the spirit out like most people tried to do. They were going to invite the spirits of the people on the outside that roam into the house to help remove him, and then not try to force him out. Not to give the spirit power, they had to cut all the electricity off. It was pitch black on the inside, completely black. They had to black out the windows, and so you put your hand right here and you could practically touch your nose and you couldn't see your hand, is how dark it was. And we were seated on the floor, and then in the center of the floor was the offering of food and gifts for the people that were attending. And there was about 20 to 25 people seated in a living room, all on the floor. You couldn't see the person to your left or to your right, but you can hear him breathing, you can hear him shuffling around and everything. And then as the first song started, it was just the drums, and it was the person performing the ceremony and two other people that were assisting him out. And then when that song ended, imagine something completely dark, and then just hearing whispers of other people that are in the room with you. And then a second song started, and when this song started, the song had changed to a higher pitch in his voice. And when that pitch started, a vibration came from the other side of the room, from where he was at. And we're sitting on the floor, and you could feel like if you were to toss a pebble into calm water, it would wave, you would see the wave move out. That's exactly how this felt. This vibration started over on his side, and you can feel it just like not necessarily a hum, but you could feel the floor shaking. And then it started coming towards me, and then it was right underneath me, and then it went from the floor to the wall, and then up behind me, up my back, up past my head and right into the ceiling, and that's when the vibration stopped. And I was just like, oh, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what I got myself into. I mean, I've never, had an experience like this before. So that song completed, and then the third song starts, was not the high pitched as the previous song, but the drumming was a little bit louder. I started hearing chanting or other voices in the room, and I was guessing that it was the people next to me, but it was from all different directions around me. And one sound came from down the hallway in one of the back rooms that I recognized, and only I guess could hear it. And the sound was a ooh. And when I heard that over the drum and over the song, I thought in the back of my head that, I've heard this sound before. And then I hear the ooh again. And I'm like, I know what that sound is. I had my eyes closed, and I projected my thought, and I said, if you are who I think you are, then you'll whoop again. And then I heard whoop, and you could hear him stomping down the hallway coming into the living room area where we were all at. And you just hear this boom, boom, boom. And then when he got closer, as the drum was going, you could hear him jumping to the sound of the drum. boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, this is impossible. This can't be happening, because there's food, there's all these items that are in the middle of the floor, and I don't hear any of that shaking or breaking up or anything like that, but there's something working its way from the back of the room towards us, and it's gonna end up in the living room, and it's not breaking anything. But I can hear this boom, boom, and I hear this whoop, 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 whoop. I had no idea what to do. I'm just sitting there listening. The medicine man before this all started said, you're going to experience things that maybe people, maybe animals, but these are the spirits that are going to come in and help guide this spirit out. It could be past relatives, anything. He says, but if you're afraid of the dark, then you should leave now. And when the song was ending, then you could hear it retreating back to where it came from down the hallway. Boom, 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 and it just got faint. He asked that somebody turn the lights back on, and I was like, I don't know what I just experienced, but it was beyond me. And the man starts going around the room from the right-hand side to the left, and I'm sitting off to his left side opposite him. And he's going around, and he said, you had so-and-so visit you. And then when he got to me, he looked at me and he goes, you have something attached to you that you shouldn't have. Something came into this room and wanted something back. You have collected something that you shouldn't have. And then somebody over here on my left side, on that side of the room, yells out, he's got hair. And I thought back hard, and I was like, yeah, about 4 or 5 years ago, before this, I had collected some hair out in the woods from a nest that we had found in the woods. And I collected about six or seven strands of it and put it in an envelope, showed it around to the co-workers and everything. And then they said, well, you should have it tested. I was like, nah, I already know what this is. So I just tossed it in an envelope, threw it in my desk, and then just basically forgot about it. He says, you do something that after today and after this meeting, when I talk to you about it, you will not be ignorant in the ways anymore. Anything that you do from this day forward will be all on you. And if you don't return what he wants, then if he can't get to you, then he's going to attach himself to your children or somebody that you care about to try to get back what he wants. And he says, see me after the ceremony, and then I will give you some steps in order for you to follow, going back out there, returning what he wants, and then 3 items that you'll need in order to complete this ceremony. And then I had to go back out to the site where I collected the hairs from and perform the ceremony right there. And it took about 15 minutes to go through the whole thing. And then when I was done, I started packing everything up. And then I don't know why I did it, but I asked aloud, I go, I've given you back what you wanted, are we good? Does this clear between the two of us now? And then down below me, I get a long whoa! And I wasn't expecting that at all. And when that sound got projected out towards me, I looked where it came from, and then I put my hands up in the air and I said, I'm going to take that as a yes.